welcome to another video. Today I'm going to teach you how to set up NextAuth, and we're going to be using version 5 of Auth.js to set up fully server-side authentication in NextJS. You will learn how to set up the sign in and sign out, set up the NextAuth configuration, and it's effectively going to be email only sign in with sessions. So we're going to be using database sessions. This is actually an update from my previous video because NextAuth, or Auth.js, which is what they're called now, have updated their packages quite a bit. And although V5 is not fully released, it's still in beta. We are going to be using the beta version now so that we can make use of its latest features, and it allows us in Next.js to set up a fully server-side authentication. You can sign in and sign out on the server basically, and without having any kind of components on the client. As you can see on my screen, we've got this auth v5 example. We're on the home page. If I click me, you're not signed in, and if I click protected, access denied, I can sign in. And so we'll do that in just a minute, but I'll link to my other video, which this is actually an update of. So yeah, check that out if you're interested. But if I were you, I would be following this one, as it's the V5 and the latest version of the beta software that they have available. So I'll show you an example of signing in with a magic link. So if I put in my email address, it takes me to auth verify request. If I go to my email, I've had an email here, and now you can see I'm authenticated. Previously I was not signed in, now I'm authenticated. So if I go to me, you can see I'm signed in. If I go back, you can see I'm on the home page, protected page, and I can sign out like that, and you see I'm not signed in. And that's all done on the server. There's no client components. I think the only client component we have is the input and the label. The authentication itself is all handled within the server, and you can kind of access the session within or throughout the application using the auth kind of method that they provide. So let's go ahead and start. So I'm going to set up a new project, and we're going to call this, actually let's just use npx create next app, and we'll call it auth. Yes, no, yeah, and that for us, just do what they give us. So open up auth. Cool, we've got a bare bones create next app. Now I'm going to install all the packages. So I've actually got a command here, p-add -d types node. You'll see in the package JSON we have these packages, and we're just going to add those, and then we're going to add all the packages required for this project. Okay, so we've got our packages, and now what will we do? Let's just clean this up a bit. Delete that. We don't need this. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Let's add the .env here. .env, because we need env, a .env instead of a .env.local for Prisma. Prisma will recognize this, whereas it doesn't with the .env.local. So let's get rid of that. All of this is unnecessary. That is also unnecessary. And we can just delete this page, put main, public, we don't need that. Okay, so I've stripped it down a bit. Let's make sure our tsconfig is set up. Node. And okay, let's start by creating a reset.d.ts. Let import at total TypeScript. So we just do that, and then we include that here. Okay. Next thing on our list is setting up our next config. So let's have a look. We want to put React strict mode to true. And then let's just make sure we're actually running. So if we just do main page, go to localhost 3000, main page. Okay, great. So we got a couple more config things to do. So we installed this package called this one here, T3OSS env next.js. That is really useful because what we can do is we can go env.mjs and we can export const env equals create env. And then that comes from T3 like that. And then we can put our server environment variables and our runtime environment variables. So what environment variables do we have? In the GitHub link that you'll see in the description, we have a .env.example file in that repository that I'll link to, and I'll show you what we have in there. So we have this, which is your database URL, your auth URL, your auth secret, and your resend key. I'm going to put in my credentials here, and then I will just cut that part out, but you'll have to put in your own in there. So we're using resend to send emails to ourselves, basically. It's really easy to set up. You can go on to your resend account, put in a domain name, and then add some DNS records to your domain name or your DNS configuration. You can then create an API key that is for sending emails only, and you use that API key. So what have we got? We want to import Zod string URL, and then so we've got you can see when I save that nothing's happening, so I'm going to install, I've already installed, but I'm going to Bunex biome init. We use that for prettier like functionality where basically kind of formats your code in a nice and pretty way. So if I close all of this to our env.njs and we save that, and now that's formatting. Okay, great. Can get rid of this on the URL, can get rid of that. There we go. And let's just make sure these are all cool. And now we can add all of these into our runtime configuration. Process.env. Boom, that's all set up. So my database, I created my database before and I've added my environment variable for that database, so I should be able to push if I had Prisma set up, which I don't. So I'm going to create a new Prisma file. Schema.prisma. Okay. So to set up our schema, we need to use generator client provider equals Prisma client.js. We're going to do data source db provider equals Postgres, and URL equals env database URL like that. Then what we need in our schema is a session, and this is provided by the actually by the Prisma adapter database schema. Here we go, Postgres. So here we go. Right, we've got user, account, session, and verification token, and authenticator. So we can add these actually like that. I don't want to use this. I also don't want to use account because we're just going to be using email only. But user's perfect, session's perfect, and verification token ideal. So now if I do p prisma db push, and I just want to override my existing database, we've got our database set up, and the next step is to start adding some pages. So first of all, let's start with the header and the layout. So in our layout, we need to add a header. One thing I'm a big fan of is adding onto the body of overscroll none. That basically stops you from being able to kind of go over the viewport when you're scrolling on a laptop. It just kind of is funny. It's better to have like a solid screen, I find. So the header, what we need is a link, sign in link. So we're going to add link, sign in, and that is going to take us to auth signing. And so we can create a page actually here, auth, sign in, and page.tsx. We can do sign in page, and we can export default sign in page, and then we are going to have a sign out, which is going to be a form, and there's going to be an action with that. So we'll get around to that in a minute. Okay, so we got a form, an action, and a link to a sign in page. We look now, got a sign out button and a sign in button, and the sign in button should take us to a page where it's the sign in page like that. So sign in page, let's start creating that page. So basically that's going to be a form with an action, and it's going to have a label and an input. So what you can see here is we've got this label and we've got this input. These were generated using shad CDN. So if I go to shad UI scan, shad UI, sorry, this one, and just type in input, we can just copy this. So we're going to create a new folder here, components, put it into source. I'm going to call that input.tsx, and then we need some utilities as well. So again, this is generated by v0.dev, so there's not much point in me going through that process now. But if I I just put that into UI, and then I create a new folder called lib, and new file called utils.ts. This here is generated by v0.dev, and if you haven't used that, I would definitely check that out. Okay, and then as you can see, we're getting an error here because we need to set our TS path here. So let's have a look. That seems good. In fact, let's just change this. There we go. Cool. So now we can import our input, and I will do the same for label. Label.tsx. There we go. Import that. Cool. Got this form on the sign-in page. Now we kind of need to style it a little bit, at least. I'm going to bring this in. In fact, let me just bring the whole header in. And I can explain this to you. So we've got our session, which we're not getting at the moment because, and we've got our sign out action. We need to create these. We need to get the session from NextAuth and create an action for signing out. The NextAuth configuration, which is the important part of this tutorial, is actually going to be set up in the root of our project. So auth.ts, we're going to call it. And this is where we're going to have our options, and we're going to export an auth function, which is then going to be used in the API route. So we go to that, we put auth .next-auth, which is a catch-all, and then route.ts. So we're going to basically import our handlers or export our handlers from this catch-all, and we're going to create those handlers in the auth.ts file here. So what we really want to do is also first create a Prisma client, and that is going to be what connects us to our database. So we're going to import server only and import Prisma client. And we're going to go const client equals new Prisma client, like that. And then we're going to do const global for Prisma equals global as unknown as Prisma type of line. And I'll explain this to you in a minute why we do this. If process.env.node.env does not equal production, global for Prisma.Prisma equals Prisma. Export default Prisma. Oh, I forgot one line, which is this one. So why do we do this? This global for Prisma or client, the ultimate reason we do this, I believe, is to prevent our local environment from connecting to the database thousands of times. Because if the hot reloading and all that, it just creates a new connection. Whereas I think we reuse the connection here. And in a production environment, I think we just have one connection that's reused throughout the application. So it's basically deduping your connections here for your local environment. So we've got that. And now when we create our auth.js, we want to import Prisma. And so that was the thing that I realized before, is we don't actually need to export that. Can keep that like that. We've got our Prisma. We need a Prisma adapter, which is what allows us to use Prisma to create sessions from NextAuth. We want import next-auth from NextAuth. Let's just do that. So one thing I did notice as I installed these packages, we are not using the NextAuth beta version. So let's upgrade that. P-add NextAuth at beta. There we go. So we're on beta version 19, but it's ultimately v5. And that is the major version that is going to be released next. Let's go ahead and create an auth config file. So I want to new file auth.config.ts. And this is going to hold the majority of our config. But what we want here is We want to export the auth, the handlers, which are our get and post requests, our sign-in method, which is provided by NextAuth, and our sign-out method, and then an unstable update, which we won't use in this tutorial, but is worth knowing about. NextAuth, and then we have our adapter, our Prisma adapter, and the session is set to database with a max age of 30 days. So let's just do 24 hours. And then we need to import a config, and we're going to do that by exporting it from here. Export config const config equals, and that's going to satisfy NextAuth config. And I'm going to paste that into here. Okay, that's erroring out because this doesn't satisfy the restraints. So we need a provider. And our provider is going to be the resend provider. So I'm going to import resend provider from NextAuth, or just providers/resend. Resend is the tool we're going to use to send the emails. Can open that up, and we are going to provide a from address. My from address is going to be no reply at tlr.je. Now I can show you what that looks like. So if I go to resend, you can see I've got these domains, and I've got tlr.je here set up. And you can just add a domain like that, and you can choose the location closest to you. You can put mail.your domain, whatever you want the email domain to be used. So if it's mail.x.com, then you can send emails only from no reply at mail.x.com. But you can just use your actual domain name there. You set that up, and then you can create an API key, and you can choose sending access and choose your domain. You'll get the API key, and then you'll paste it into your environment variables. It's as simple as that. And then you can see all the logs of your emails. You can see what ones have been sent, metrics. You can get webhooks for bounces and for deliveries. There's a few really, it's a nice development experience, and there's good documentation, and it integrates nicely with NextAuth and NextJS. So we've set up our provider. You can see that's gotten rid of the TypeScript issues. However, there's a few more things we need to set up. So one thing is, if you want to kind of trim or sanitize your email, you can add this. Normalize identifier, which is the email, and you can get the domain and the locale from it, or the username from it. And you can see there's some comments here, so yeah, feel free to use that. You can also throw an error, which will redirect the users to the sign-in page with error email sign-in. So that helps with sanitization of the email. Now, one thing we need that's required is trust host should be true for now in local development, and then we're going to add some pages. The pages are basically when you have a custom flow, you don't want to use the kind of default NextAuth config. So you can specify the URLs to be used if you want to create a custom sign and sign out or error pages. Pages specified will override the corresponding built-in page. So we're overriding the pages that are provided by NextAuth with these routes, basically, or these page routes. So for example, when I go to auth and I go to sign in, that's our route, and that you can see here is we're overriding that. So the standard one that NextAuth uses, I think, is something like that, or maybe some other route that they have built with NextAuth. So let's just override everything. I think that's everything there. Got custom verify request page as well. So these are some of the pages that we're going to be building before we build the verify request. We don't really need to build a sign out page because we can just redirect to home, but it's just there so that you can see what you can rebuild. Then there's just some basic config here, which is like the callbacks for the session, which is setting the session user. So when you sign in, that'll set the user who's signed in to the session so that you can retrieve them without, you know, performance issues, or like, you know, if you want to find, some people tend to find the user from the database and then show information about the user there. You can just set the entire user. Obviously you don't want to set passwords here, but there is no password for email magic link anyway. But if you're doing credentials, you wouldn't want to set the password here, for example, the hashed password. So yeah, you can set it to the session and you can get that session anywhere in the application, both on the server and on the client. But in this case, we're going to be doing server only. And then just some helpful logging, which is always helpful. So that's our config, pretty basic config, auth.ts file as well. So now what we need to do is we need to go back to our route and we're going to export get and post from, and we're going to @/auth. Actually, no, we're going to do, in fact, let's add that to here, /auth.ts. So @/auth. You can see these are not being sent through, so actually we need to import handler. This is our handlers, and they're basically what allows NextAuth to catch any API requests that are made directly to NextAuth. NextAuth's own API, which, you know, does various things like creates a user in the database, sends verification tokens, kind of takes all that out of our hands having to do that and just does it for you. Obviously you can go in and like create your own version of this, which I'm not going to go into here because it's too long-winded, but you can do that. It is possible to create like versions of or manipulate the underlying code of NextAuth to create like a custom verification token request. And to be honest, it's simple actually to do that. If you wanted to send a custom verification email, you can do that with resend pretty easily using the resend configs. So, but we're not going to do that here. We are just going to set up basic authentication with sessions and database sessions and NextAuth v5 beta. So we've set up our config. We've set up our auth.ts. Now we are going to use it. So we're going to go const session equals auth. So we're importing our auth. And we need to await that. So we need to export default async function. Cool, we've got that. Now we're going to create our sign out and sign in actions. So if I go to app, we're going to do action. We're going to do sign in.ts, sign out.ts. I'm going to export const sign in action equals. That's going to take in some form data. And then what is the sign out action going to do? It is going to do export const sign out action equals. Pretty simple on this one. We are going to make it async and we're going to await sign out from auth, which is coming from here. Sign out. We've got sign in as well. So we're just exporting an async await function, and then similarly here we can await sign in, and then we need to make this async, and we're going to use resend as our provider, and we're going to pass in form data like that. Now I could go into doing some validation here, but I'm going to leave that to you. I would typically use like a auth validator or something to perform the validation, but for now we're just going to sign in like that. So I can now import my sign out action, and let's go to our sign in page, and let's import our sign in action, like that. So everything's on the server here. You see we're in a page, we're not using use client. We've got our action there, action here. And now that should send a magic link, but let's see where we're at. Cool, we're on our main page. Go to me, doesn't exist. Protected doesn't exist, sign in does exist. Functions cannot be passed directly to client components, and I should, okay. Stupid mistake. Use server in their actions. There we go. We got our sign in page, and that needs to be formatted nicely. Let's just do max width by pixel. Auto. Okay, so we've got send me a magic link, email. So actually let's just go ahead and create these protected pages. Pretty simple to create. Auth, new folder, protected, me, page.tsx, page.tsx. So the protected page, we're going to send an access denied component, which is basically this. To a link. So we've got a protected page, and we're getting the session from the server, and if there is no session, we are returning an access denied. Alternatively, we display the page with the session. Okay, pretty easy. Similarly for the me page, we are exporting a default function me page. We're getting the session, and we're saying you're either signed in or you're not. With NextAuth, I've been struggling to get middleware set up, because with middleware, if you're using JWT sign-in method as opposed to database sessions, which are my preference, you can use middleware, but with database sessions, because NextJS middleware is on the edge, it's not very compatible at the moment, but it probably will be in the V5 release. I'd imagine they're working on that. But yeah, with database sessions, it's a nightmare to set up middleware, but the benefit of having middleware is you can kind of do a global protected routes, if you like, it's just a bit cleaner to set up. But at the same time, I don't mind using this, pretty clean anyway. So got our protected page. I go there now. Oh, need to protected. Just change this to auth protected and auth me. So me, you're not signed in. Protected, you must be signed in to view this page. And main page, sign in, we've got our form. So that looks good. Now, one other thing I want to show you is we can actually make a protected API route using NextAuth as well. So if I just do new folder, protected, and we do route.ts, it actually can create a wrapped route handler. So this is a get route handler, and it wraps it in this auth. And doing so gives you access to NextAuth request, which is a type from the NextAuth library, and it has auth on it, which is a session. So you can actually access the session in the route handler, and you can basically send them an error message if they can't access that route. So it's a protected route, or if there's no session. So if request to auth, return protected data. So you can see that if there is no session, you can give them a not authenticated. So I can show you, let's see if that works. We go to API/protected, not authenticated, there we go. So that's returning that. We haven't set up his auth verify request. I add a page for that. So the verify request page is where we are sent when we send that email. When we send that magic link to our email, we get taken to this page, which is in the auth config. So it's this page here. So it'll basically redirect to the verify request page. What we're doing here is we are getting the session, and we're saying if there is a session, so if someone's already signed in, they don't need to be on this page. Okay. And it's similar on the sign in page. We actually can copy that and async await auth. We can redirect if there's a session on the sign in page, because if you're already signed in, you don't need to see that. Okay, let's give it a go. dev@plr.je. Send me a magic link. Okay, the sign-in link has been sent to your email. Let's have a look. Nice. Sign in. Boom. I'm authenticated. It actually took me to the auth new user page because I am a new user. So if I go to auth config, you'll see here I'm a new user and it's taken me to that page. So you can that's only because we've got this in here that it's taken me there. So yeah, you can customize that to however you like. But if we go back to home, me, signed in, protected, you can see we're rendering all the session data here. There's my email verified. Didn't set an image, didn't set a name. The token, when it expires, when it was created. Decent. That's all server side. And the only thing that isn't is these two components here. Or this one component, sorry, the label. Other than that, everything is on the server. And that's pretty much it for setting up the latest version of NextAuth. If you found that helpful, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're interested in hearing more. The next video I'm going to do is probably going to be creating a car dealer website. So I'm going to use v0.dev, the tool that I mentioned before that allows you to create components with AI. We are going to use that to create a full kind of user dashboard for a car dealership to create cars or classified ads for their car dealership and to display it. So there's loads in there. There's going to be authentication, there's going to be images, there's going to be upload forms, there's going to be a ton of stuff there, and it's just going to be kind of me going through the whole process on the video. Yeah, on a whim, so you're going to see me debugging, kind of going through my whole process of how I would set that up as quickly as possible. And if you found this helpful, please stay tuned for more. Give me a like, subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I will leave a GitHub repository link to this project so you can kind of copy it yourself and play with it. Any other resources I think are helpful in the description. Thank you for listening, and have a great evening or a great day.